Let's bring this back online. So recess is over. Have a motion, come out of recess, go back into the meeting.
Move it.
Motion by Commissioner Vice Chairman Moss. Second? Member Fano. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. It's hard after so many years trying to get, but we'll get it together. All right, so with that, we're back on to the meeting. And at this time, Mr. Attorney.
Yes, Marty, will you pass out the questions?
Yes.
And give you a second to look at them. Honestly, I relied on Howard's judgment on the questions, so I think there's 8, but there's a subpart, so there's plenty of questions. And
Let's say that a little closer.
if I remember correctly, I think there's 8 questions, but there's subparts to the questions, and they're all topic related. So there'll be plenty of questions to ask for 1 hour. I guess the next is bring up the person that you want to interview.
All right. For the record, I know that none of us has seen the question, but for the record, I would like each one of us to go by and start out on my left. Member Fano, have you seen these questions? Vice Chairman?
I have not seen questions.
They might be afterwards. Go ahead. And for the record, neither have I. So let's take a minute or two just sitting here and look at them. Members, I think by doing it this way, it is the most appropriate, most professional manner. And the questions are guided in a way that is a substance that I think is before us today for our evaluations. So I think if we pick 3 or 4 of them, each person or 2, whatever you feel comfortable with. If you feel like asking a question, that's up to you too. And then at that point, I will ask you to ask the same question of all 3 people, so that way it doesn't look like it's for one or another or stuff like that. I think it's a pretty balanced process moving forward. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Vice Chairman.
in looking at the questions, and again, I'm still perusing them as we speak, if there are some areas that have not been touched upon by the former executive director, how can the board address those issues? Clearly understanding that any questions that are asked of one individual must be asked of the other 2 as well, from a fairness standpoint. So I'd like to get some clarification on that.
All right. Mr. Attorney, I know that's probably to our preference, or do you have some policy that you've done in the past?
We've never had this. I've never been here for an executive director selection. The reason we chose those questions, well, I didn't choose those questions, Javier wrote them, is to just make them consistent. I think they're subject matter related. I think that if it's on his or her resume, I think it's fair game. But I don't have a feeling either way. But if you're going to ask a question, the same questions got to be asked to each person.
And that's been stated by the Vice Chairman, and I totally agree. I would ask that the questions be limited from this. If you have maybe 1 or 2 questions that you may want to ask, just remember you have to ask the same question to the next person.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
And I asked that question because, I want to understand what the potential candidates' positions are on diversity as it relates to contracting and staffing.
That's a very good question, and then I will accept that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and any conflicts with relationships with those who have been trying to dismantle MDX.
Okay. That's fine. Those are 2 questions that I think that should be here, and that's good. Commissioner Manos. Member Manos.
Chairman, the attorney and you also suggest that we only ask, except for those questions that were just added by Commissioner Board Member Moss, if we're going to do a follow-up question, says we can, but can other members follow up on the questions, on the question that was asked by another board member?
When it comes to their turn, they could ask that same question, but I think once you start following up, then you're going to have to do the same questions to somebody else and the same follow-up.
I understand that.
So,
Yeah, I think the follow-ups are free game. I mean, like my example is someone says, yeah, there's 2 cars over there, and your follow-up would be, what kind of cars are they or what color they were? I think that's all fair. We just want to stay away from, organic questions from one person and not the next person. And I think that everybody on this board understands that you want to be as fair as possible, and everybody gets the same type of questions. The answers are more likely than not, all 3 will answer the question differently. So there may be follow-up to somebody's answer that you may not have to give to the next person. So I think that you have to use your judgment on that if they already answered your follow-up.
All right.
Mr. Monastery? Member Monastery?
Well, I think the
Okay,
questions before me are some very, very, very good questions, but can I ask as to how did we arrive at such a limited number of questions?
Well, I think that they asked former Executive Director Javier Rodriguez to prepare questions, and you've been here for 16 years. Javier, please ask questions that are relative to your position. That's how they came up with. Now, he was asked to provide 15 questions, and I think with the sub parts, it adds up to 15, and I think that will be
I agree.
more than enough for 1 hour.
I hear, but they're very good questions, though.
I honestly, I don't even have the questions in front of me, so I would imagine, because he's a very thorough individual.
Yeah. You said you hadn't, not even your dreams, but I think we're going to dream these after. Yeah, for a while.
If I
Member
may,
Fong.
and I'm in total accordance with Board Member Moss, if we possibly could get that in a written form so that they're all on the same page and it goes into the record as those questions being asked, is it possible to add them to this?
The 2 questions, I don't see it as a problem.
Yeah, we'll include it in the summary minutes, and we'll add them. I mean, do you want them added now?
And do you want to repeat the 2 questions, or each one of them?
Yeah, I could forward, my thoughts, I have them written down. One would be to have them to give me their thoughts on accomplishing and maintaining diversity in both the contracts administered by MDX and, just as important, the staff makeup at MDX. And then the other one was, do you have any direct relationships or ties or indirect relationships? For example, are you friends with individuals or firms who have relationships with any of the state officials who have been trying to dismantle MDX? I could forward these, Mr. Turner, I could forward this to you.
I think you'd have to buy Sunshine, one of these.
Okay. Where should I forward?
Why don't you do that offline? Come over here a second, please.
Thank you so much.
That way, we're not getting texts from everybody. Is that good, Member Fano?
Thank you so much for all.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, I was just writing my last one now. All right, I think as soon as we get this printed up, then we're going to.
I have a question on
Treasurer
5A, the way it reads. No?
I don't have them in front of me.
Oh. Well, I don't want to say it out
I'll
loud.
go over
but
there.
I just want to, yeah. It starts by asking to describe the experience, but then the subtext doesn't. So if the answer is yes to 5A, I'd like them to explain explicitly how and when and how large a budget.
That's fair.
It's very appropriate for us here.
Yeah, I think it's a
So, okay, so I don't want to throw a follow-up if, so describe in detail then also should be added to 5A.
No, that's a follow-up.
That's easy,
This
yeah.
is real simple, just write explain. Go ahead.
The candidates are currently secluded, so are they together or separate?
No, separate.
Separate. The reason why I'm asking is because this is the age of technology. What prevents someone from being in the audience here and texting everything to?
Well, see,
Whoever's
this
being
is the age of
secluded here.
technology, but I've been around the block a couple of times. So they do not have technology with them. We've asked them to give up their technology,
That's one way.
including Apple Watches. But
I think that, I don't,
when I come from,
I know Mr. Toledo personally and then Darlene personally, and I don't think they would be involved in such a thing. But I always err on the side of the appearance of impropriety. So we took their phones.
yeah, the three. Like I said, we've been around the block a couple of times. Oh,
Okay, perfect, thank you.
okay, are we ready?
Questions, very good questions, Commissioner Moss, thank you.
Actually, they are.
Yes.
Actually, I was more or less in the same field, but I
Yeah.
said mine a little differently, but his is perfect.
Very good, thank you,
Okay, so
guys.
with that, let's bring up the first person, please.
What are we doing, alphabetical?
No, that's,
Backwards?
I'll let her do it.
Oh, it's on you, Murray.
Marty, can we? I'll go get them. Who do you want? Who do you want to interview first?
Excuse me?
Who would you like to interview first?
Reverse it, just in case people.
So you want Mr. Toledo first?
Yes,
Okay, I'll go get him.
thank you.
I'll get him.
Like the usual is the unusual. The usual is unusual. Yeah. Yep, he's got, I think he's in Louisiana. Remember the last time we were there?
Yeah.
That was different times. Ugh. Katrina, which ended up as, we delivered an incredible mission. We had 24 tractor trailers, two big box trucks, and 7 vans, big cargo vans of baby food. We actually looked like the what was it, Piggly Wiggly, or the setup we did outside looked like the whole store had been put outside. It was incredible, the feat. I'm sorry, mic was off. All right. So, let's start out. Anybody wants to start us out? Member Fano.
Good afternoon, Mr. Toledo. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good to
Thank you.
see you. Thank you very much. My question is, please describe in detail your understanding of the transportation issues facing Miami-Dade County.
So the transportation issues in Miami-Dade County. Well, congestion obviously is at the key of the transportation issues here. How do we get more people moving in the county has been at the crux of transportation for a very long time. And we've been trying to work at that, collectively within MDX, the county, DOT. I believe that we need to figure out a better way to move people more effectively and more efficiently. I think we've been working at that collectively with the county, within the transit projects and the projects that MDX has been able to deliver so far. And we need to continue to find ways to do that more effectively.
Follow-up question, could you give me an example of what you would think would be more effectively?
Well, I think we need to, on the heels of what we just finished doing with the buses on the shoulder, establish more effective routes for express bus service, providing more options for our commuters, not just the vehicles and fixed transit routes, but we need to be more dynamic with those routes. I believe that when we were looking at taking on those express bus services, one of the things that we wanted to do was to make it a little bit more dynamic based on the user and the time of day and so forth. So I think we need to be open to changes within the transit system and how to move more people if we were to go down that road.
Mr. Cuarto?
Mr. Toledo, what role would you suggest MDX play in Miami-Dade County in light of our growing infrastructure demands?
Well, I believe MDX needs to be needs to definitely be indispensable to the county. We've done that in the past. We've been a great partner with the county and the state in delivering projects. We need to explore more ways for MDX to be a better partner. We got to look at our documents, at our covenants and so forth, and see how we can partner better and deliver better projects to the county, working collectively and synergy, with synergy with the county and the state.
Just a follow-up, do you have an area of focus in how MDX can fill that role better in the future as opposed to how it occurred in the past?
Well, I think the best way to look at that is look at the projects that we have coming up. The Kendall Parkway is a great example of how we can be a great partner with the state and the county. We're looking to expand the 836, 14 additional miles to the west and to the south. And within that, we're looking at a multimodal corridor. We're not just looking at vehicles, we're looking at everything. We're looking at transit facilities, we're looking at how to move people better and move commerce better. There's a lot of opportunities for MDX to look at the county's needs when we develop those projects, and how do we be able to deliver and advance some of those county initiatives as part of that project. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for MDX to be at the focus, at the center of delivering not just the MDX projects, but moving the needle for the county as well.
Thank you, Mr. Toledo.
Monestein?
First, sir, I want to thank you for all the services you've already rendered to this organization. So, and with that, I would like you to help us understand how you organize and lead a long-range transportation planning process to prepare MDX to function effectively within the next 5 years.
I apologize, but I didn't hear that clearly. If you can just repeat it a little.
You organize and lead a long-range transportation planning process to prepare MDX to function effectively over the next 5 years or longer?
Well, well, the first thing I would do is work with our, our team internally to see what we can do, how we can put that plan together. We would, I would definitely work with all the stakeholders involved to be able to make sure that the plan that we put together is effective and it serves the purpose of what we want to push, which is moving transportation forward and into the future. I would make sure that, our plan includes sound funding, sound financing, and it's something that we, make sure that the plan that we put in are promises that we are going to be able to keep and deliver. Not sure if that answered the.
Well, I'll use this as a follow-up, considering that the last couple of years has been very challenging. So when you say the plan has to be extremely consistent with your finances, how do you see us moving away from the current situation that we are, that we've inherited from COVID, and how do you think that will change in the years to come in regards to our finances?
Well, that's a great question because it's not just COVID. I think when you look at the traffic numbers, I think we've overcome COVID from a traffic perspective. You look at the numbers you look at traffic on our system, but look at the current situation now with the war in Ukraine. That's having a tremendous impact on gas prices. That's going to have a tremendous impact on our overall construction costs. So as we put together these plans, we need to reevaluate all of our programs, all of our cost estimates. We need to make sure that the projects that we put on the table are going to be affordable. We need to make sure that we can deliver them, and we may even have to look at staggering some of these projects and be realistic about how we're going to deliver them. One of the things, you asked how I would put this plan together. I would manage expectations. I would make sure that as we put this plan together, because of the fluctuation in prices and the market and everything else, that we make sure that we deliver a clear message as to the viability and how the reasonability of how we're going to be able to deliver these projects and when. 4 years ago, we thought we could deliver the Kendall Parkway in a 5-year time span. I don't think that's true with everything that's gone on between legislation, the pandemic, and where we are right now. We may have to expand that a little bit more, but again, that's also a variable depending on how traffic performs on our system and the revenues that are coming in and our obligations to pay our current debts.
Thank you,
Thank you, sir.
Marcy. Treasurer.
Mr. Toledo, welcome, and thank you also for your service. I guess number 4 is a 3-part question, so I'll probably have no follow-up. And it's a favorite of mine, being that my background is psychology. So describe in as much detail as possible your management style.
My management style is I like to establish a team work environment. I like everybody that works under me or with me, that they are part of the group, that they feel that they are part of the problem-solving efforts of what we're trying to put together. I'm not a dictator when it comes to leading my staff and leading my teams to the end game, but I do expect that when there's a problem, they bring it to me and we work to solve solutions together. I believe in my 17 years of delivering projects, that's the way I've always managed every aspect of what I do, and because of that, I've been able to harness everyone's talents, and everybody that works with me has always moved the needle forward to make sure that we deliver our projects on time and on budget, and we've never had any. I've never experienced any issues with that type of cooperative teamwork style.
There's an A and a B part. I'm going to do B first, Mr. Chair, because it's a perfect segue from the management style. It's a question on your ability to develop partnerships and then also be a leader in the community. How will you describe that ability?
So in developing partnerships, we we need to make sure that we're on the same page as far as the goal of what we're partnering on and who we're partnering with, and that's going to vary from time to time, depending on the projects and the initiatives that we're taking on. Communication is a key in making sure that we're not going off on different directions when we're trying to accomplish a goal. So to me, partnering has the key to partnering is communication, and ensuring that we're talking the same language when we're trying to establish that goal for the end game. The second part of that? To be a leader of the community is you need to be confident in, and you need to really be confident in our objectives. You need to believe in what we're doing. If you can't portray yourself as someone who's confident in your work and in the goals that you're trying to achieve, then that's going to reflect in the public, and it's going to reflect out there, and you're not going to be credible. You have to own what you're doing, and that's been the key to my work experience is, believe in the projects that we do, know that they're going to make a difference, and go out to the public with that confidence that we are providing a service and we're providing something good for the community.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, lastly, the last part of question 4 is to please provide your experience in the public and private sectors, and being that you've been here at MDX for 17 years, I guess we'll stick to the public. Part of that is describing your experience, and I love that you use the word ownership. So please provide your experience in the public sector.
My experience in the public sector has, obviously has been all MDX. From the moment I started here, I came in, I would say I came in at a little bit of a disadvantage because I was working with the general engineering consultant firm prior, developing a lot of the projects that were starting to get on the street. So to me, it kind of felt like a very unique opportunity, because not only was I able to create a lot of the concepts and a lot of the work that we were doing at that time, dating back to 2005, we were just starting the 836 extension. But I was able to come in and then, see it get built from this perspective, which is from the owner's point of view. I had that unique insight of being able to develop, being able to carry it forward, and being able to help others build what we had envisioned from the get-go. Throughout the course of my time here at MDX, again, I go back to every project that we've done has been a necessity project for this county. I don't think there's a project out there that I can tell you didn't make any sense. We always found ways to make the system better. We found ways to connect people better. And we always took every opportunity we could to make that happen. Working with our team, our internal teams, whenever we found a project that we thought was gonna move people better, alleviate traffic, not just on the system, but on the off-road, on the off system. And I, a great example that I can give you is when we did the entrance ramp to go west on the extension off of 107th Avenue by the DOT. That didn't exist. If you wanted to go west to the extension, you had to get on at 87th Avenue, which means that you had all these people between 97th and 107th and so on that didn't have access to get to 8th Street and 137th quicker. We found an opportunity to provide a slip ramp on through 107th Avenue. And that just was one of those things that I think is unique about working here at MDX, is that we've always had that ability to look at things and say, hey, what about if we did this? And does it make sense? And we go and we type it, we put it on a napkin, we move it forward, we cost it out, and we put it into the work program, and we make it work. And that was a project that we delivered, and it immediately alleviated traffic on 107th Avenue and Northwest 12th Street, because that was the only way to get to 137th Avenue at that time. So, working here has been an incredible privilege, and looking at those opportunities, I think that, looking at the future of MDX, seeing that we're getting to the finish line of this issue with the legalities and everything, and we're going to be able to move forward, I think that I look forward to being able to have these opportunities to find these ways to better traffic for the community and make the system and the overall traffic better to the county.
Thank you, Mr. Toledo. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Treasurer Weinberg. Mr. Vice Chairman Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to go to one of the questions that I submitted. First of all, Toledo, thank you very much for your work in the past here at MDX. Really appreciate it. The question I have is, give me your thoughts on accomplishing and maintaining diversity in both the contracts administered by MDX and, just as important, the staff makeup at MDX.
Okay. I'll start with the contracts. I'm very proud of the programs that we've put together here at MDX, our small and local business programs that basically reach out to address that very issue. You know, MDX's policy is a very low number that we've always achieved, which is a very, I believe it's a 10%, but we've always strived to be better than that. And I believe that in the future, we want to continue to do that, to provide opportunities to small and diversified businesses. Our goals have always been minimum 30%, small or local business, and we've always done that with every single project. Every project that we put out, we look at it with a very fine comb to make sure that we can meet the goals and that we can stretch the limits of making sure that we can provide more opportunity to small and local business. I'm proud to say that 90% of our contracts have always met or exceeded 30% small and local business. And to the point of local business, that was a program that we instituted here at MDX because when you have firms that are certified small business and they get to a point where they no longer meet the threshold to maintain that small business certification, they're kind of held in a nebulous of they're not small, but they're not big enough to continue to do business on their own. We established a program that allowed companies that graduated the small business program to have an opportunity through the local business program to continue to have opportunities with MDX, and that has worked very well here. Again, we look at contracts and we either split the 15% small business, local business, we combine them in no certain way so that we can achieve those goals, but we've always stretched that out. And we've always been able to meet the 30% on most of our contracts. And when I say most of our contracts, because some contracts are very specific, and sometimes you can't meet those goals because of the specificity of the work that's being done. But we always look to make sure that we can achieve goals and bring in that diversity on our contracts, and we will continue to do that as part of our initiative to move forward. As far as staff, I would say that I think we have a somewhat diverse staff in terms of various ethnicities and races. Moving forward, the agency is going to be evolving. We're going to be looking at a much more healthy work program as we move forward. We're going to see more work putting out. I think that's when, and using, I guess, a phrase from my predecessor, which is, you got to make sure that you right-size the agency. A few years ago, we right-sized the agency, but it was in a downward way because we didn't have enough work. We didn't have, the work wasn't there to maintain such a big staff. I see that as the agency grows in the future the way that we want it to, and we start putting these aggressive programs together, we're going to see more opportunities. And in that sense, I would like to see MDX provide more opportunities across the board to any and everybody that wants to come and work for us.
Follow up. From the agency's standpoint, as it relates to the diversity in contracts, have you What's your views on taking a deep dive into, to really looking at all of the various categories of individuals who are here in Miami-Dade County and trying to assess whether or not, the agency is doing a good job at that? What would you see doing to just kind of make sure that those numbers are good?
Well, the first thing I would do is that I would look at our stats. I would go back to our to our contract records, and go through all the vendors that have done business with MDX, and I hate to, I hate to use this word, but categorize them into the types of company, the companies that are doing business with us, so that we can see who is it that's doing business with us. And one of the things that we used to do in the past that I would like to see revived is we used to have an annual small business fair, for lack of a better term, and we would invite all small minority disadvantaged type businesses, because we want to continue to encourage those companies to do business with us, and we want to help. And what we would do is that we would create a partnering sessions with bigger companies, so that the opportunities existed and those relationships were formed with other companies that would have, the size of our contracts are sometimes big, where they would have to, some companies have to go out as some contractors or some consultants. We would make sure that those relationships started to happen with our program, and we would help in that scenario. Anytime that we do any type of contract, we have vendors always coming to visit us to get to get better acquainted with the type of project and the scopes and so forth. And we guide them through the process. We've helped them in terms of what it is that we look for in the type of vendors that do business with MDX. And I like to say that we've helped a lot of companies be able to do business with MDX because of the way that we encourage them to come and talk to us, and we educate them on the right way to come in and make sure that they are competing at the same level as companies that have had the experience that they don't have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Moss. Mr. Toledo, I've known you for a while. You've done a great job also. And a couple of those projects, I think we were involved together, and that slip ramp that you talked about, I think I had a little thing or two to do with it. So I want to thank you also, as my colleagues have, for being here and stepping into the plate before us and seeking this opportunity. With that, we have a present situation before us, which is a very difficult situation. And I would like to ask you, can you give me an example of persuasive communications of a complex information?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Persuasive communication of a complex information.
Persuasive?
Conversation of a complex communication.
That's a very good question.
Basically, a difficult situation that you were able to persuade someone or a group of people about.
Oh.
Give us an example
Okay,
of
that. I thought you wanted to. Okay, I wasn't sure if you. Okay, no, I'm glad you did. Thank you for the clarification. I actually have a good example of a complicated, persuasive situation that I was in, and this was a while back when we were working on the toll improvements on State Road 112. There was a entrance ramp off of Northwest 39th Street that people would use to bypass the existing toll plaza. That was a cash plaza that existed right just east of Northwest 22nd Avenue. We were going with all electronics, so we were gonna be getting rid of that gantry and that plaza, thereby improving the flow of traffic on State Route 112. And what that created was a safety situation with traffic now entering the system between, it was 17th Avenue, between 17th Avenue and the exit at Northwest 12th Avenue. So we had to close that ramp. And, well, I wanted to close that ramp because of as an engineer, I look at safety first, and I'll never forget Johnny Martinez, God rest his soul, told me, "You're crazy. You're never gonna close a ramp on an existing expressway." I went out to the community on both the north and south side of State Route 112, and I established relationships with the community leaders on both ends. And I showed them, and I showed them how that ramp was gonna be a problem for people getting on and people getting off. It was gonna create safety issues. It was gonna, life safety issues. And I also showed them how it was gonna improve the quality of life along their roads, because now you're not gonna have traffic circumventing other roads to bypass a toll that they would have to eventually pay. After months of public communication, public meetings, I got the community support to be able to close that ramp. Subsequently, I got negative feedback from emergency response units who wanted to keep the ramp open because that was their route to answer to emergency situations on 112, I-195, I-95, whenever there was an incident. So we compromised. And what we ended up doing was that we closed the ramp to the public, but we kept it open via a gate to emergency response, and we put an electronic Yelp sensor, which basically the gate would open with the siren. Whenever they would come with the siren, whoop, whoop, it would open the gate, they would be able to come in, it would close behind them. The minute we did that and we accomplished that project, it received overwhelming response from the community and from our local law enforcement and emergency response unit, because we established a project that worked. We took a difficult situation and we were able to partner with the community. We were able to partner with the local elected officials that serviced that area. I believe it was, at that time, it was Commissioner Jordan. We went to her offices and explained to her what the situation, we got her support, and we were able to get it done. And to this day, that gate is still there, but people don't, but people respect it. Nobody tries to bypass that, and it's still a project, and we were able to achieve the public safety concern by delivering that project through communication and persuasive conversation, I would say.
You basically answered the follow-up of it. I think that the intent of former director was really the communication that is used, the action you explained, but the sense of communication is very important in the executive director. That is, in transmitting that situation in a verbal form to persuade the other person. That is the way I understand the question. I know the action. Persuasive communication. What would you have done in that situation?
With the example that I gave?
Yeah, because you already gave the second part that I was going to ask before.
Well, again, what we did was, through communication, through conversation, we explained what the problem was, what we're trying to solve. We want to get the feedback from all the stakeholders, because, closing a ramp is not an easy thing. People are used to using it. It's disruptive. So that not everybody's going to have buy-in. So you have to have constant communication, and you need to understand what the other side is thinking so that so that we can have that conversation. It's not a one-sided deal. It's not here, I'm gonna do this and you have to take it because that's the way it is. We need to come to an understanding of how do we do this together so that it benefits everyone. We understand the disruptive nature of these issues. We understand that it's not, it's not gonna be, roses for everybody, but how do we make it amenable to everybody? So persuasive conversation is, making sure that we collectively work together on resolving issues and problems to make sure that we accomplish the goals that we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you so much. I think that everybody's had their questions. So with that. You win? There is some other questions. All right.
Number 5 on
Oh, no,
the finance.
that's why I asked if you guys wanted to ask a couple of questions.
Oh, okay.
I thought you just wanted to pick one or two and move forward.
Oh, I thought we were doing all of them.
You want to do all of them?
Yeah, absolutely. They're good questions.
Let's start again from the beginning.
5,
This
that's
time I
mine.
switched it around. I did opposite quarters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We're gonna be, thank God we got food back there.
Smart.
Mr. Toledo, if you can please describe your experience for an agency like MDX in public finance, as well as your knowledge of financial analysis tools.
Okay. In my experience, my time here at MDX, on the, working with our CFO on the finance side, we looked at every initiative that we undertook, and we applied. We looked at all the, making sure that all of our cost estimates were up to date, that we had everything, that we gave enough data, supportive data to our chief financial officer to make sure that we can put together work programs that were achievable. The other aspects of financing that I've experienced are the different type of financing opportunities that are out there for projects and for the agency, be it regular bond financing or public-private partnerships, and how the intricacies of what a P3 can provide to be able to deliver a project. As far as financing models, we typically would work. We typically work with our CFO and our financial advisors to, again, provide the data necessary to make sure that the work program that we want to deliver is achievable.
Thank you, sir. And as a follow-up to that, can you provide a few examples of how you've developed the budget and also how you've had to defend your budget for a public board or private boards and commissions and those type of settings in the past?
So in developing our budgets on an annual basis, we look at two things, at least and I'll give you my experience from obviously from the engineering side and from being the director of engineering. We look at two areas. We look at the work program and the projects, and we look at our operation and maintenance budgets every year. And we look at, what are the fixed contracts? What are the fixed expenditures that we need to make sure that obligations that we have to meet every year. We look at the needs of the system from an operational standpoint, because at that point you have different funding sources. You have your bond sources, but you also have your general funds and your operating funds, which are two different buckets. So you have to be able to distinguish which one goes where and know where your limits are. Every year we look at what we need to do. We look at our annual inspection reports and we see what is it in the system that needs to be done, and we program everything based on priorities, and we make sure that our cost estimates are up to date and at the current standard. Because again, you always have fluctuations. Things are going to vary. They're going to go up. They're going to go down. But you want to make sure that your budget is going to cover the work that you need to do. Same thing with the work program and the projects. Every year we revisit our cost estimates to make sure that we're taking into account every fluctuation. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we're starting that process now, and we got to factor in the fact that oil prices have skyrocketed. That's going to have a tremendous impact on construction costs and material costs. That's going to have an impact on the number of projects that we might be able to present to this board later in the year. So we look at all those variables when presenting that program to them, and then we, working with finance, we prioritize those projects so that we can make sure that we deliver what has to be done at the current time. And whatever has to be deferred is deferred in a way that's not going to be to the detriment of the system.
Mr. Toledo, if you can, on the second piece of the question, if you could articulate as to your experience presenting to public boards and building that stakeholder buy-in, I think.
So every year when we do this process, we present our work program to the board. We present it to the TPO. We're part of we are part of the TIP approval process every year. We have to, on capital improvement projects, the county TPO approves our, those projects on our end. So I do go and speak in front of all the respective boards and committees to show what we're going to do, explain how we're going to do it, discuss the scope of the projects, why they're needed, and at what stage of the process we're at, so that there's again, managing the expectation of what it is that we're delivering. Are we doing design? Are we doing construction? Are we doing planning? All that gets discussed every year, and I go and I essentially sell that to all the different committees and agencies so that we can get our work programs approved and we can move forward with our projects.
Thank you, Mr. Toledo. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I have a follow-up on that financing track.
Can you hold it until
sure.
until you get Board Member Fano? Jump to your side now. Then I'm coming back to you, Commissioner Moss.
Is your bike on?
Thank you. Being on the board, I think, not the oldest, well, maybe, the longest standing member here today. Can you please let us know why you should be the next executive director of the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority?
I was expecting something like that. I am MDX. I see myself as MDX. I've been here for 17 years. I've worked alongside the previous executive director for all the time that he's been here. I understand this county. I live in this county. I know where the problems are. I see it every day. I'm proud to be a part of the solution or solutions that we've provided to the county. I think I'm a good leader. I know I'm a good leader because I've seen that in the results of the work that I've provided. I get along well with everybody that I work with because I work in a very healthy environment that harnesses partnership, that harnesses getting work done. That at the end of the day, we can have our disagreements, we can have our differences of opinions, but I think at the end of the day, we all want to get to the same finish line. And if we do that through communication and teamwork, we're going to get there. I'm not a politician, but I've worked with a lot of the elected officials in this county in delivering a lot of the work that we've done. I understand. I'm not gonna pretend to play politics as the executive director, but I believe that the director has to have an understanding of the political environment, especially with the projects that we want to deliver, because that introduces a lot of strategy to make sure that we do it right, that we harness support as we do that. A lot of times, a project could be great, but if it's not the right time, then you need to consider that. And you need to listen. You need to listen to what people are telling you, because you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot. So, I think in my time here, I've learned to listen to our stakeholders, our board, our elected officials, to be able to successfully move this agency forward. I think I can continue to do that, and I'm confident that I can lead this agency into the future, especially with the Kendall Parkway on the horizon. I think that's one of the best projects that this county has coming up. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and you'll see that in me. You know, I'm not here to fill Mr. Rodriguez's shoes. I'm not him. I don't think you're going to get that out of myself or the other two candidates that are vying for this position. But you are going to get a dedicated individual that wants to improve the quality of life to this county through this agency. I've been doing it for 17 years, and I would love to continue to do that, sitting next to you guys on this dais.
Thank you, Mr. Toledo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Treasurer Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Juan, I noticed you use "we" a lot, which is, you know, a good quality in a leader. I want to ask you a specific question as a follow-up when we were doing the math. Our new board member, Cueto, asked about the financing. You've been here through these 2 years of COVID, or past 5 to 7 years of legislative changes and mandates, et cetera. We have a rather healthy budget, as you're aware, coming into fiscal year 23. We're looking to prepare our budget sooner, hopefully by May, and our 5-year work plan. We have some, I don't want to call them overages, but we have some percentages above forecasts, as you may know. Were that not the case, and we were saying where we were maybe 4 years ago, where we had to make some changes 3 years ago, how would you reconcile making the difficult decision of looking at a budget, you yourself, and saying this has to go or that has to go based on your management style? How would you manage a difficult budget year ahead of you? Which is not what we have, just for the record. We have a very healthy budget year. But how will you manage a not so healthy budget year?
Board Member Weinberg, I would do what I've always done. We look at our needs. We look at the priority of our needs, and we budget accordingly. We want to make sure that we are, first and foremost, maintaining the system to the standards that we are held to, and in accordance with our trust indenture and our bond covenants. That's key. We cannot do any less than what we are required to do. So that's the first thing that I would always look at. Then I would look to see where we have opportunities to do more and make sure that we're doing it in the right way. We don't want to be viewed as doing something frivolous in a very complex year, but we want to make sure that we can show that everything we do is a need for the agency and for this community. And that's the way we've always done it. That's the way I will continue to do it.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Member Monestein.
Mr. Toledo, you're very well aware of some of the legal challenges that MDX has been facing. Now, what do you believe is the appropriate path forward for this organization?
That's so where we are currently at, I guess, you know, we are in the middle of a lawsuit where we are asking the courts to define our property interests on the roadways. That's the crux of the legal issue that's in front of us right now. The county passed an ordinance last May reasserting the existence of MDX. That has not been challenged by the state. So our existence, I believe, is strong based on what the county has done and the fact that they are standing behind us. We have a transfer agreement that was executed in 1996 that transferred all the operational jurisdiction, control, maintenance, ... We understand that the state owns the underlying land. The state owns this flat surface. but we own the mic. We own everything that's on it. Those roads belong to MDX. Every asset belongs to MDX. I believe we're in a strong place. I believe that, I believe the law is on our side. I believe I truly believe we're gonna prevail, and once we do, we are gonna move forward in a very fruitful way. That's how I see this, our legal challenges right now. Yes, the hiccup is that we need this decision to be done by the court, and it's an interpretation of law that we don't have control over. Luckily we have a good legal team that has put together incredible arguments, and I believe that we're going to be successful.
And if you're faced with situations where competing interests are pulling you in different directions, including direction given you by this board and your personal direction, feeling as well as to what should be done, how would you handle that?
Again, communication. Communication is key to anything that is at the crux of any disagreement, of anything that is not what maybe it's something I don't think is right, but maybe it is. Communication is the key to making sure that we all move in the right direction. I don't believe I would ever recommend doing anything that I don't believe is the right thing to do. I'm open. I've always been open to anybody coming to me and convincing me when I'm wrong or when I need to be a little bit more open than I usually am. But I would handle any situation of conflict through communication, because that's the only real way that you're going to resolve it, and that's the way I've done it in the past. We've done partnering projects with a lot of our agencies, sister agencies, and there's always been, conflict in developing that project, but we've always worked together to resolve it, and compromise is something that we have to be open to making sure that at the end of the day, if we're looking to deliver a project, if we're looking to deliver a goal, we need to agree that the goal has to be met. If we can't even start there, then we don't have a solid foundation. But if we can at least agree that we want to get to the goal line, then I believe we can accomplish anything.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Toledo, do you have any direct relationships or ties or indirect relationships? For example, are you friends with individuals or firms who have relationships with any of the state officials who have been trying to dismantle MDX?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, that's it.
Mr. Toledo, if you're faced with a situation of competing interests, and this is part of the follow-up of my colleague, Monestein, if you're faced with a situation where competing interests are pulling you in different directions, how would you handle it, and be specific?
Okay. If I was in a situation of competing interests, and I'm looking at it from a agency standpoint, I would have.
This is on the legal situation, moving forward, as part of that underline.
Oh, under the legal.
Yes.
Well, if I found myself under a competing interest, my interests right now are aligned with MDX, and making sure that, based on what I know today, that we defend this agency 100%. if a competing interest came to light, I would need to understand what that competing interest is, and to be able to objectively work with this board on finding a resolution. But right now, I think that the interests are very clear that, you know, we are an agency that was created by Miami-Dade County, and that we need to confirm the property interest that was given to us by the state of Florida, so that we can continue to operate the way we did prior to the 2019 legislation.
Thank you. I think that's it. All right. We thank you for sitting here with us for a little bit and answering our questions. So if you could proceed back to where they, I don't know, wherever you put you. And then we'll bring you back in a little bit.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next person.
Who would you like?
Follow in that order.
Well, Frank Guymere?
Reversed it.
Okay. Well, it's Guymere. He's,
What's that, huh?
only Javier could answer questions.
I got hungry. It's your fault. Okay. I love it.
Thank you.
And this time, yeah, I'm going in the same order as we did last time. But I got to wait for a little bit. If you don't mind, give me a second.
Indeed. Apologize for the delay.
Okay, Board Member Fano, if you could start out with a question, we're going to follow everything in the same order we did before.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here. Could you please describe in detail your understanding of the transportation issues facing Miami-Dade County?
Transportation issues facing Miami-Dade County right now is that if you look back at, there's several factors that affected. One of them is it was laid out on, was platted on a grid network with section line and half section lines. And as we grow the county, we try to deploy all these section line roads according to the way things were intended to be platted. What happens is that as you move forward, certain sections were not always developed, and you end up condensing arterials and not allowing the free flow of traffic throughout the county. So that being said, and the way the county expanded, you have a road network that expands. And in the planning process, it was important to tie in all these factors that contributed to the congestion and try to alleviate it. So you have a growth, you have expressways that gather all this, these people trying to get to and from work or leisure and entertainment. And at some point, there was also a transit component that was not completely incorporated into it. So now we're trying to piecemeal everything to try to mitigate this traffic. And you have this growth that's occurring countywide. So you're looking at a change in mode. People are trying to either work at alternative work schedules and different locations. They're looking at alternate modes of transportation. Some of them are looking at, you're seeing a lot more pedestrians in urban centers and a lot of cyclists, but ultimately you still have also a demand for people who need their cars and their vehicles. And the effort also to move with a transit option in Dade County, as much as you see in other cities and municipalities, I think it was never embedded as much as it should have been, so that people at least had a transit option when they had to travel.
Thank you. As a follow-up, could you please let us know how could we do it more effectively?
I think you're already seeing a lot of changes in doing it more effectively. You have public outreach. You have a lot more of involvement, and you see that highways are no longer being built at just highways with one mode of transportation. You see, transit lanes being developed along highways. You see bicycle path, and you see also pedestrian access more and more being thought out during the PD&E process. That kind of helps people understand that there's alternate ways to travel throughout Dade County, not just one. The idea is not to make Dade County, dependent on cars and give people the options to do it. In a lot of the PD&E studies right now, as you're doing your NEPA and you talk to the communities, a lot of the feedback that you get from them in these studies is, can you please give us some trails, some connectivity where we don't need a vehicle to get to where we need to go? And you're seeing that more and more used throughout the development process.
Thank you. Member Cuarto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Guymere, what role would you suggest MDX play in Miami-Dade County in light of growing infrastructure demands?
Did you say what role or what?
Yes, what role should the agency play?
I think holistically, they need to look at countywide the ability to expand connectivity to maybe some other areas of the county that may need that access to mobility. The north of the county could use some connectivity as well. Most of the plans that are ongoing right now are definitely going to benefit congestion significantly in your program. The other thing too is most of these programs nowadays have multiple modes of transportation options as well. I think by the time you implement all of these connections and connectivity and you complete and you tie in all the grid network to the expressways, eventually you're going to just relieve congestion. You're going to see, for example, some of the major highways are tied into some ongoing design projects that the county has. Ultimately, when the county network connects to something, an expressway, then you end up alleviating congestion in those neighborhoods.
Thank you, Mr.
Member Modesty.
Mr. Guyman, how do you see yourself organizing and leading that effort for a long-range transportation planning process to prepare MDX and therefore Miami-Dade County to effectively function over the next several years?
I think that the executive director of MDX needs to have, I have the skill set to be able to do it, and also you need to be able to be a right fit for that role. As far as the skill set, you know, I've been doing this for 30-some years. I worked at the DOT, and then I worked in construction industry for 6 years. I was as a project manager for the Port of Miami Tunnel, and then at the county also as a county engineer and the deputy director. Most of our projects have the same format that MDX follows. We have a planning stage, a development stage where we do design criteria package. Procurements are very similar, and then I see it through construction and maintenance. And the other component that would help me in this is also being the right fit for that position. I mean, I grew up here, I went to high school here, I went to college here, I worked here. I know the community. I meet with cities all the time, homeowners associations, to get their constant feedback. People know me, like the board members know me, and also I've worked extensively with the construction industry when I was with Odebrecht, as well as when I worked as a project engineer. And it also teaches you sort of the other side of how people perceive us, the government agency, when you're either a consultant or a contractor looking at how we do our business. Having been involved in all of this, I think I would be just the right fit for it as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Treasurer Weinberg.
Thank you. Mr. Guyamir, since you mentioned the tunnel, everybody should know we did work together. Frank and I were not too far from each other's offices for 5 years through the design-build process of the Port of Miami Tunnel project. So we're in good company with some incredible candidates today. I have question 4, and maybe I'll just throw in my follow-up and be done?
That's good.
Okay.
Well, why
Well,
don't we follow the same process?
Same process? Okay.
Same process,
Okay.
yeah.
Sure. So I get to come back to the microphone.
Whatever. Or maybe I'll let you just go right after they state the whole question, then you could ask that question then.
Sure.
That'll
So-
make it easier.
Thank you. My question
with the
is a
rest.
3-part, and we sort of combine. So we want you to describe in as much detail as possible your management style.
So my management style is I try to be as, so there's 2 reports to the management style that I have, is the people that are around me, that work with me, and we discuss matters, and I usually allow the people that work directly for me to have enough autonomy for them to be able to make their own decisions in their own process with their own staff. As I work with them more and more, they usually, I'll know which one, how they want to be involved, and if they want me to get involved in their decision process. At some point, if they need my help, they'll come and they'll escalate it to me. I'll communicate with them. I'll look at some of the issues that are involved, and then I'll determine from that whether or not they need me to be more involved in them or whether or not they made the right decision. If a decision has to be usually escalated, I'll look at it and say, okay, we need to escalate this to a supervisor. In this case, it would be to this board, depending on the severity of the matter. But in a brief nutshell, that's usually the way I manage my staff and my management style as well.
Part A, to please provide your experience in the public and private sectors. And you do have both in recent years.
Okay. So I started my career in the Department of Transportation. So I spent 20 years in the public sector working for the Department of Transportation. I started in the PE training program, which is the same program that Javier Rodriguez did and a lot of us were part of. Then I went and then branched off into the bridge program because it was probably the most challenging program that I thought at the time. It was involved with drawbridges, segmental bridges. It was just a lot of technical stuff that at the time was really fascinating to me. After 20 years there, we were able to fix most of the infrastructure that the Department of Transportation had on backlog and some bridge repairs. We worked on the work program that I oversaw. I was at the end overlooking the work program, the scheduling of the future bridge work, and also the financial aspect of the work program at the DOT. So in 2010, I went on to the private sector, 2010, yeah, and worked for Bouygues as the project engineer. On that job, I was responsible to coordinate the work efforts between the design builder, our consultant that was producing the plans, and the construction force that had to do the force. The interaction was to make sure that the plans were provided to you in a timely manner, that you followed a schedule, and that you met your schedule, and also you could do it on your own budget. So that was 5 years. It was fascinating work. It was extremely challenging. It also taught me a different angle that I had never seen at DOT before, because at DOT, the mantra was always that, the contractor wasn't so much a partner of the agency. It was the agency had no problem understanding consultants are an extension of staff, but for some reason the contractors were never seen as really intertwined with them. And as a role on the tunnel working there, I started understanding more and more the relationship with the owner from another side of the fence, which I took with me when I left, and I went to work eventually for the county. In between that, I worked 1 year for Odebrecht, and that was actually extremely fascinating as well because I had never done a pursuit. So I was a design build coordinator, and we were to submit projects. And during that procurement period, it was actually really challenging to see what the MDX had in their program and all the other roadways. And I saw a side that I had never seen before because the tunnel was already awarded when I started there. This was a pursuit. It was a new angle, and it was extremely fascinating work to do. So then that being said, I started in 2015 at the county, and my first meeting that I have as a county engineer and the deputy director, we have a claim from a contractor. And, and everybody's like, oh, look what the contractor did. Look. And then I looked at the claim, and it amazed me to see, and I was actually thinking, did I actually think that way when I was at DOT? So they did, brief example, the plan showed a 14-inch pile had to be removed from a bridge as part of demolition. Contractor went out there, there was 15 feet of concrete there because it had been retrofitted. And they didn't see the validity of it. And I was like, guys, you gotta listen, you have to keep an objective mind. When somebody brings something to you, you gotta listen to it before you make a judgment. So listening to this was, and I try to get everybody a little bit at the county to understand, be objective when these things come up to you, because if not, you're going to be always in the corner with the same mentality. And here I am today.
The final part of that question, thank you, is to describe your ability to develop partnerships and to be a leader in our community.
I think that to be a good leader in the community, you need to be how should I say, extremely open-minded and receptive to everything and the people around you. And you need to also have strategy in place. That the reason for that is, as my role as an executive director, diplomacy is going to be key to moving forward with everything. And sharing this information with the board members is important. But without a strategy to recommend to your board members, then diplomacy only can go so far. At some point, the board members are going to ask, well, do you have any ideas on how we can resolve this issue? And I think that I've proven that I've done this in my career as keeping things open. I go to, you look at the past 30 years of my career, the projects we do, we meet with communities, we meet with cities, homeowners association as we develop everything. We meet with the construction industry. I meet with commissioners on a regular basis to brief them. And these are all components that are very important when you're trying to be objective and see what you're going to do moving forward. The part about the second part that I think was important is to be able to bring forth strategy, is because sometimes when you present situations to your board members or your commissioner, you need to be able to demonstrate that you have a way to solve this problem, and especially when there are things that we may not have seen during our implementing phase. I'll give you, almost every time when we meet with commissioners, we'll present something, and then they'll say, well, by the way, we have this situation, and then we're like, oh, well, we didn't realize that this was a factor. We have situations right now. We had one last year also where a road needs to be built. We're thinking we're going to get it built in the regular time, but then you find out that there's economic consequences for the road not being built in a timely manner. This particular road had to be built by Christmas. So then we readjusted our procurement schedule so that the contractor had an incentive to meet the deadline and was able to meet the deadline of December 24th to open these roads.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll hold off the follow-up in order.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we'll keep it
Thank you, Mr.
sequential
Grimier.
order. All right, thank you. Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Grimier, welcome. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your service in the past. Give me your thoughts on accomplishing and maintaining diversity in both the contracts administered by MDX and, just as important, the staff makeup at MDX.
The contract makeup, Commissioner, and the contract makeup is very similar, and I would follow the same structure, or very similar to what we have at the county. And because when I worked for Odebrecht, we created our teams, and we had DBE requirement that we would submit in our proposal, and we would get graded in our design as part of the design criteria package in a certain amount of value of points as to how well the design builder presented his team and how diversified the team was. Were they using local workforce and disadvantaged business companies as part of the package? That's probably the strongest way to do it, because it's also binding to the contractor. And afterwards, it also helps you improve and help these companies grow in the long run. I'll use an example right now on the South Corridor. The contractor that's building is using SBE for the erections of some of these structures. And they're there supervising them, but ultimately you end up with growing construction industry and more people able to participate. As far as in-house staff, the best way to do this is through communication, to interact with your staff to see and get involved in the hiring process and see that the hiring process is fair and equally done.
Follow-up. On the follow-up, what would you do to look at the numbers to ensure we are meeting diversity goals?
As part of the procurement process, and no, actually beyond just the procurement process, I would expect to receive a report at least quarterly that shows how we're tracking in our procurement process and how we've identified these parameters and making sure we're following them. I would guess this gets reported to the board as well, and that you would want to be informed as to how we're progressing through this.
All right, I have some follow-ups, but I'll keep it,
In the process. All right. First and foremost, Frank, as I told the other person, I've known you because been involved in several, I think a couple of things that you mentioned just now, and working in these things out. I want to thank you foremost for the work you've done, has been stated by several up here, and also thank you for being here and being part of this process. With that said, can you give me an example of persuasive communication of a complex information?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the beginning?
Can you give me an example of a persuasive communication of a complex information?
In
I
other
would,
words,
sorry. Put both of you on timeout, please.
Yes.
Did you understand the question? You want me to?
Explaining a complex process in layman's term.
And of the complex information. A
Yes.
persuasive communication. A persuasive communication has been brought to you, but in a complex, how could you explain it in being a complex information?
Are we in a purely technical level, right? I could explain a mining process. In a semi-quasi-touchy process, judicial process, it would be a different conversation. Like, for example, right now we're trying to resolve an issue with Miami Lakes. It's very sensitive. It requires a lot of diplomacy. Now, in the technical concept, I would love to explain to you how a tunnel boring machine works, but I don't think that is exactly what you're looking for.
The persuasive part in that complex information. I'm trying to get it so. And we did the same for the prior person.
So the parameters to explain something in a persuasive way is to present to, I'll assume, the board, all the facts that are part of the situation. And I'm assuming we're not going into the detail. You just want to know more of a process. Once the facts are presented in a clear manner, then I ask usually for feedbacks and any questions or anything that might entail. I'll give you some complex example of situation was some of the connectivity we have right now with the Miami Lakes. You know, presenting it to commissioners, board members, and everything, some of the questions entail traffic patterns and traffic flows, and being able to explain and disperse rumors and bring in facts as to whether or not there's improvements to be made as a result of it and what the effects of these changes will bring.
I think that kind of answers part A of that question is give an example of or presentation or report you have made that was controversial. And I believe you used an example of a situation that's very volatile and that it was persuasive communication based on that. Am I correct?
Correct.
All right. So I wanted to make sure the second part was answered with what you said in the beginning. Okay. Let's start the next round, and let's start this time, Mr. Cuarto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member Cuarto.
Mr. Guymere, can you please describe your experience with public financing and also your knowledge of financial analysis tools in the context of a roadway agency?
When I left the Department of Transportation, I oversaw their 5-year work program for the Bridge Division. When I went in the private sector, each activity that the construction had to do, I was responsible also to establish points, which like there were completion points and financial points. At the county right now, I oversee part of the project has some PTP bond, which is very similar to what you would see as instead of getting toll revenues and running an MDX agency, the county gets PTP from a sales tax, and they use those revenue streams in order to establish a bond, portfolio and issue bonds like that. So you figure out of $3 billion in the 5-year work program, we have about $2 billion of bond issuance, of which we've already paid about $500 million. The other $1.5 billion is on 30-year notes that we have. Looking at MDX, I think MDX is right at $1.4 billion also in debt financing, so with bonds as well. So it would be very similar in nature. What we do at the county is we usually wait until the rates fluctuate, where if you were to refinance your bond you would save about 5% of your outstanding debt. Once you get that 5% mark, then we go out to the bond market, put out an RFP, and wait for those bonds results to come back. I don't know how much more. I mean, I could get into some real details. It's up to you.
We have some follow-ups in
okay.
this area. We'd like to know, Mr. Gammier, have you developed a budget in your experience in your career, and have you had to defend a budget to public or private boards and commissions? And of course, if you could give us some examples of that.
So every year, I have to responsible to draft the budget, put it together, and present it to the Board of County Commission. And usually what we do is prior to the budget going to the board, we'll have briefings with each commissioner and explain what each component of our section of the budget will entail and what it encompasses. Then, of course, the night of the actual budget, we sit in chambers just in case some questions come up as well.
Thank you, Mr. Gammier. Mr. Chair.
All right. Board Member Fano. In the mic. So good.
I will learn. Why should you be the next executive director of Miami Expressway Authority, Miami-Dade Expressway Authority?
Mike.
It's on.
No, but get it closer.
Okay.
There you go.
Could you please explain to us why you should be the next executive director of Miami-Dade Expressway Authority?
I think to be the next executive director of the Expressway Authority, you're going to have to look at two components of the candidates that are extremely important to the role. One is the technical skills and their abilities, and the next thing is going to be the fit of the individual with the community. So on the first one, to address the first one, the technical abilities, I've been doing this for 32 years. I've been in the transportation industry. I did private work as well as government work. I did work programs that were secured from Tallahassee to work programs that are secured by PTP funds through bond issuance. The process that I've right now in charge of, whether it's through overseeing the SMART plan or other PD&E process, follow the exact same process that MDX does. We do our NEPA process, we do our preliminary designs, or we do design criteria package, we do our award, I oversee the construction and as well as the maintenance of the facilities afterwards. So as far as the technical skills, they're the same ones as MDX. I've had them. I could tell you that during the NEPA process, I've had numerous meetings with cities, homeowners association, board members, even the construction industry gets feedbacks. So we're always in the same interaction. I've been to those meetings and I've known what it does. So as far as the technical abilities, I have it. And on top of that, I worked as a contractor, which I think gives me an advantage in the fact that I'm able to see that it's not always the way an owner sees it. There's another side to something. The other thing is the fit. The fit is more of the community and my ability to be out there and reach out to the community during our process. So again, homeowners association, meeting with cities, meeting with community activities. We go out there, we sit in malls, we show our projects. I went to high school down here. I went to college down here. And the board members know me. They've known me for a long time. It's not like I just, came into town. and I also bring a relationship with the construction industry. So I think that, for that matter, I would be the right fit, and also think that I would have the right technical skills to be able to fill that role.
Thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer Weinberg?
Thank you. Mr. Gamier, as you know, I am the treasurer of this board, my third year now. We are coming into a fairly healthy budget year. I'm happy to report, recovering from COVID, pre-COVID numbers, et cetera. However, I wanted to get from each candidate what you will do and prioritize coming into a potentially bad budget year. How would you manage a budget coming into a potentially bad budget year?
I would probably mimic something that we did at the county. So instead of refinancing on the open market bond issuance, you could do two things. You could do negotiated rates of bonds where you actually meet with banks and you try to negotiate better bond terms. Or what you can do is issue commercial papers on short-term notes, let's say a 2-year term. And that way, instead of grabbing all that money and paying interest on it, what you would do is basically get a line of credit, and you would use it as you're developing your projects. Once the line is used, then you can reconsolidate it and decide to put it in issuance of bond. We did something very similar to on our recent bus purchase. We had $150 million of CNG buses to be done. What we did is we structured a commercial paper for short term. In this case, we didn't even have to use PTP as a collateral because as the buses were coming in, the equity was the bus. And we ended up drawing from the line just to make the payments for the delivery. And then ultimately, when all the delivery is done, you can reconsolidate that into a more solid long-term debt over 30 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all for me.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Guy Mayor, do you have any direct relationships or ties or indirect relationships? For example, are you friends with individuals or firms who have relationships with any of the state officials who have been trying to dismantle MDX?
No.
Okay.
I want more questions like that.
Commissioner Monestein.
Thank you.
Commissioner Monestein, I apologize.
Mr.
I
Gaiman.
jumped you.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
so I apologize.
That's fine.
So
That's fine. You've
we'll adjust to that order. I apologize. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. You're very well aware of the current legal situation facing MDX versus the state of Florida. What do you believe would be the appropriate path forward for MDX?
With the understanding that that decision is going to be taken above the executive director's level, right? I draw my ability at this board and the direction of this board. So recognizing what's going on and believing extremely strongly in the Home Rule Charter and seeing the history that and the relationship that we have with the state, even though we always come to success at some point, it affects our bond rating. Not a lot, but it's because of the entity that MDX has. They have had excellent bond rating for a long time. But every time you see this happen, it hinders our ability to move forward. So it would be nice to see at some point in the future where some kind of long-term agreement can be made with the state where we could find out, hey, are we going to be doing this every year? Or can we just have some kind of truth where you recognize that even if they were to dominate, they probably would end up winning because they would have to probably issue bond as well. They would be in probably worse a predicament than MDX is right now. It does not benefit them to try to continue down this road moving forward. So I would think that at some point, if the board wanted to do so, they would be like, look, try to establish some long-term arrangements so that we don't have to be always like this, so that the bond rating can go back up to what it was before that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On same pattern of questions that was just asked on the issue with the MDX in the state of Florida lawsuit. If faced with a situation where compelling interests are pulling you in a different direction, how would you handle? And please be specific.
Competing interests.
Competing
Interests, I apologize. I'll repeat it. If faced with a situation where competing interests are pulling you in a different direction or directions, how would you handle? Be specific.
I would make my recommendation to this board, and wherever this board decides to move forward is the direction I'm going to move forward.
Okay. Thank you. With that, the questions as prior, so I want to thank you, and if you could go back to wherever they put you guys in.
Yep. Thank you very
And
much.
we'll call you up in a little bit.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
you,
We
sir.
appreciate it.
Thanks.
So with that, next person. I think there's one left.
Yes. You want to bring her right up, or you guys want to take a 2-minute break or something like that?
You guys want to bring?
Hello.
Bathroom? We're good. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon. Mr. Chair, board members, good to see you again. On the other side now, but
Let's start out the same order that we had before. So at this point, Member Fano, you lead us off.
Thank you for being here. Almost. You can say that. Could you please describe in detail your understanding of the transportation issues facing Miami-Dade County?
So, as many of you know, I am the Assistant Director for the Department of Transportation and Public Works. Probably transportation is my #1 focus, and I see a lot of issues for transportation from that perspective. I think that a lack of planning, lack of execution, and probably lack of commitment has caused us to be where we are today. Congestion is something I think we all experience, which is a huge issue here in Dade County. Whether it be the expressways, the feeders that go into the expressways, and even our neighboring streets that get affected and impacted because people are trying to bypass being stuck in traffic, which affects our everyday quality of life. Another issue that I see, which is something towards our planning, is the urban sprawl that has happened throughout the years. We have a lot of density, low density, that's located, for example, West Kendall, down south, and parts up north, which, of course, now to build this infrastructure 30, 40 years later, it's very expensive. So I think people depend a lot on their cars to get to and from our core centers of work. I think, as well, the pandemic has created a lot of issues. And it's something that it's a good thing to be on because a lot of people have moved to Miami-Dade County. So our growth has increased. We have a lot of tourism, but also transportation costs have also, I believe, they've increased significantly. And I see those impacts in Dade County. Our fleet management, handling the cost of maintenance for our vehicles, transit. The cost of our capital has increased significantly. So it's how do we overcome those issues for the future, because that's a reality of where we are today. So I think it's a combination of many different things. And again, I think we've lacked a lot of incremental progress, which I believe we've done a lot of hurdles in the last 5 years with implementing the SMART plan. The SMART plan is something that it's, again, showing incremental progress, and we have to continue that route for us to get to where we need to be for the next generations to come.
As a follow-up, how do you think we could do it more effectively?
More effectively. So I think we need to use technology at the forefront. As a Miami-Dade County employee, when I started at the county, we had a lot of issues that we were in the times of not having enough, we didn't have a good traffic management center. Our signal controllers were outdated. So a lot of the focus on our future and how to fix it is using technology, connected vehicle, automated vehicle. I believe being a partner with also the transportation planning organization, we have many options to be able to pilot different concepts because that is our future. I think also being an integral partner for the SMART plan is important for this agency. We don't only affect our expressways, but we're all committed to smart growth, and we have to do it collectively. Whether it be Dade County with the TPO and local municipalities, it has to be one voice so we can all move forward to where we need to be. I think also the Kendall Parkway. I know we've talked about this project before. I think that's a very, very significant project for this agency, being that we're also introducing multimodal as part of that. And I think that MDX being at the forefront of that is very good. It's gonna help a lot with the perception that we are just building expressways, but it's actually gonna be able to incorporate transit, pedestrian, our trail, and of course to get vehicles in and out, which increase obviously our it makes our economy better for the for our goods and services. So that's what I see could be potentially where we could go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You. Board Member Cueto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Fernandez, what role would you suggest MDX play in Miami-Dade County in light of our ever-growing infrastructure demands?
So going back to probably a lot of what I just mentioned in the previous question, I do believe in smart growth. Okay, so MDX has to be in the forefront of that. for us to be, again, an integral partner in the SMART plan, using our technologies, and also partnering with building partnerships, maybe finding also other sources for revenue that are not just toll revenue, but building partnerships with the state, with the county, in order for us to do better. Kendall Parkway, again, so I'm going back to that same exact question, that I think the Kendall Parkway is a project that's upcoming, it's important for this community, and I believe it's gonna alleviate a lot of, again, it's congestion on these roads for us to be able to get around and improve our quality of life.
Ms. Fernandez, just as a follow-up, is there a particular area with regards to infrastructure you see MDX filling a particular role or gap?
So again, I go to the SMART plan. SMART plan is important. We have to move more people, and of course we have to move vehicles, but we have to focus on people. How do we get people from point A to point B in more of a mass transit? And I know MDX has partnered in the past with the 836 with the bus shoulders, but I do believe there's much more we can do, creating those intermodal centers as well in where it makes sense in order for us to continue the growing demand and for people to be able to have our one location for us to have different freight and services that are also provided for this agency.
Thank you, Ms. Fernandez. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Member Monestein.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Fernandez, I think part of your answer to these two questions perhaps preempted my question in any way. When you stated you seen MDX being an integral part of the TPO and the SMART plan. Now, how do you see yourself organizing and leading a long-range transportation planning process to prepare MDX to play that role and effectively lead Miami-Dade County over the next several years?
Okay. So currently at the county, we develop our long-range transportation plans, which we go to the TPO on a yearly basis. I do understand MDX also follows the same process because the TPO uses all the plans from all different agencies to house it into one place. I believe that my priority is to first identify the needs of this agency, which is, as I said, one of the issues is the SMART plan, and then present that to this board and understand what your priorities are. Every single one of you may have different priorities on how you believe it's best to move forward this agency. And I think once we identify that, we also need to look at our finances. What can we afford? What can we do? We have existing debt, and obviously we need to look at what our revenues look like to be able to put a solid plan together. I think once we get to that point, we have to present this to our TPO, apply for that, and put it into our plan for us to be successful.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Treasurer Weimer.
Thank you. And Ms. Fernandez, thank you for your service, your brief service on this board, and it's nice to see you here again. My question is a three-part question.
Okay.
First part is to please describe to us in as much detail as possible your management style.
Okay, you want me to answer that first? Okay. So I lead about 200 plus employees right now in Miami-Dade County. I want to tell you that I am an open door policy person, very transparent, and I believe understanding the strengths and weaknesses of all my employees is important. I believe that to be a good leader, I know every single one of my employees, every single one of them. I know them personally. I know their families, and I believe that's something that's very important because you show being compassionate is something that I think is very important. Also is building a trust. And the reason why I say that is because I lead by being very inclusive of my staff. Sometimes they do not agree with how I make a decision, or maybe they think that we should be moving in a different direction. And I think that talking to them, listening to their concerns has helped me a lot to get through a lot of the challenges I've had in the county. When I started in the county in 2015, we were tasked with, we need to bring technology to the forefront. And a lot of these staff members have been there 30 plus years running the system the same exact way they've done it. So imagine trying to tell somebody we're not gonna do it this way anymore and we have to progress to the future. That was very challenging, extremely challenging. The way I got over that was, of course, meeting with, like I said, anybody that wanted to meet with me to discuss this plan moving forward. I said, I met with every single person. And it was just not one time, it was several times to understand what their concerns were. But I needed to build trust with these employees for them to trust me. Because if that doesn't exist, then they will not work for me. So I took my time. It took me a couple months, but I finally was able to renovate the traffic management center within 9 months of me starting at the county, which was something that was not expected for us to move as fast as we did. And till today, now we are moving up and upgrading all our traffic signals, which is the next step. They had to learn a new software. And I was able to do it without an issue because they trusted the process and they trusted me. So when it comes to management, I'm a big believer on being compassionate, a good listener, and being inclusive.
Thank you. Second part is to please provide your experience in both the public and private sectors.
Okay. Public sector, county, I've been there 7 years. I also worked for the city of Miami Beach for close to 5 years, working in their capital improvements program and also for public works. Going back to Miami-Dade County, I oversee the traffic signal and signs division and traffic engineering. And also I worked at the state as a very young engineer, going to school full-time and doing an internship with the state, which I ended up working there permanently until I left to the private sector. I worked in the private sector for quite some time doing actual signal designs, roadway designs, traffic studies. And then from there, like I said, I've also worked at Atkins, I was there prior to me being at Miami-Dade County. So I worked there for about 2 years leading the transportation group for South Florida. But I will tell you, most of my career, as you all know from my resume, it's mostly public service. I love public service. I love what it means. I feel as if this platform to be in public service gives us access to do a lot of change and to be the catalyst for us to move forward. Because in the private sector, it's great. We have a lot of contracts with the private sector, but I believe that when you're in government, you're able to be the change and be the one to set these policies and move forward how we believe is best.
Thank you. And finally, describe to us your ability to develop partnerships and to be a leader in this community.
Okay. So I want to say probably 80% of my job today is developing partnerships. I would not be successful leading the way I do in Miami-Dade County if it was not for me developing partnerships, whether it be with different departments in Miami-Dade County. We all work together for the same common goal of finding solutions. I also believe that developing partnerships with, like I have with FDOT, it has been something that's challenging, but we've been able to move forward when it comes to what the federal dollars require or what they require for the scope of services from Central Florida, and we've been very successful to get projects in the ground with a partnership. I also have a partnership with every single municipality in Dade County. I have access because we oversee all traffic, not just on county roads, but also on local roads. And I've built a relationship with every single one of them. And we have worked in partnership. For example, we've created traffic calming agreements. That was one of the first things when I came to the county that we started, because a lot of them were complaining about speed bumps, traffic roundabouts, because it's the everyday issues that they deal with their residents. So we were able to create an agreement for them to be able to take over and be able to implement those things on behalf of municipalities, leaving the county out of that process and letting them be able to do it themselves. Also with the state, LED conversion. That was a huge project and a huge success that we were able to do because of our partnership with the state. We oversee probably about, it's 15,000 streetlights today. And I maintain the other 15,000 for the state. So when we wanted to do an LED conversion, we said, how do we bring the state as partners? Because we wanted to do a public-private partnership with them, which is how do they finance it? And obviously increasing those assets made the appetite of the private community to be able to bid on a job that large, because we went from growing our assets from 15,000 to 30,000. And at first, the state wanted to do their own LED conversion. So it took a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions for us to finally do what's best, which they ended up partnering with us. We signed an MOU, and that's currently, it just got awarded probably about, I want to say 2 months ago. So I was personally involved in that. I was the one meeting with them every single month until we finally got that agreement to where we both agreed, and we're doing what's best, obviously, for the community and the residents of Dade County.
Thank you, Ms. Fernandez.
Thank
That's all
you.
from me for now, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Vice Chairman Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And welcome, Ms. Fernandez, and thank you for all the good work you've done in the community in the past. Give me your thoughts on accomplishing and maintaining diversity in both the contracts administered by MDX and, just as important, the staff makeup at MDX.
Can you repeat the last part?
Just as important, the staff makeup at MDX.
So a lot of that, what we've done, small business, minority, is we've obviously, I know there's set-asides. I know there's been set-aside contracts for small businesses. I also understand that there is a perception, which I've seen being in government, is that it's very hard to do business with government. I hear this every single day. And I think we need to shift our focus on how do we go from them staying as a small business to growing into something more. And I think having workshops, having mentoring and fostering these small businesses, whether it be for them to come in and have a summit, to understand our procurement policies. I know it's hard to navigate, because I have been in government and I know the other side and I hear the complaints all the time. But I do think it's important for us to shift our focus to not just, okay, they're small businesses, how do we make them more than that? And I think if MDX can be in the forefront for us for them to grow into something more than just be staying as a small business, I think that will be, I will be committed to doing that. Not only that, I know just 2 months ago, we approved by this board setting aside these contracts to make them smaller instead of having one large prime overseeing 12 different sub-consultants. I know that's more work for the agency, but at the end of the day, I think it gives the opportunity for small businesses to be able to control what they do best, whether it be from landscaping to sweeping to signal maintenance to streetlight maintenance. I am a true believer of separating those contracts, even though it will be more work for the agency. So, and then as far as your other question that you say, important, the staff of MDX, I think we need to look and see if we need to enhance anything on our side with the staff. I believe the staff, a lot of the staff that's been here, it's been for a very long time. I think we need to be inclusive, to have all are different, be diverse. I guess that's the word I'm trying to say. It's to be diverse on how our staffing is now today. How do we enhance that? How do we make it better to provide the services that we need to provide for MDX?
As a follow-up, what would you do to look at the numbers and to ensure, in order to ensure that we are meeting diversity goals?
So I know that part of our goal requirements, there's a certain percentage, I believe, that we have to meet. I think that's how the contracts are built today. That's how they are with Miami-Dade County. And I would not mind, of course, revisiting to see how we can increase that to really set the tone of where we want to go with this agency, or to be inclusive of all. That's something that we can look at, where it's at today, and probably meet and increase that goal through time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. First and foremost, thank you for being here. And just as the gentlemen that were before you, I have been part of a lot of those projects that have been mentioned and that you have basically talked about. As a Dem, I've worked alongside with everybody that's before us. I want to thank you for coming here and being part of this. And it's important, and once again, thank you for what you do for all of us, as I think everybody's said. So with that, can you give me an example of a persuasive communication of a complex information?
So I work with elected officials, as it is today. I also work with the community on many, many different projects, and some are very controversial. One project that I know that was something significant in my time in the county was the 87th Avenue Bridge connection in Palmetto Bay. I will never forget a day walking into that room, and it was full of 300 angry residents saying, "Why are you building a bridge in my street?" And it's very hard as an engineer, and I've had to learn through time, how do you communicate what you're trying to achieve? One thing is first is understanding your audience. What is it that's bothering them? What is it that makes them upset? A lot of times it's perception, right? They think, well, I like it, but not in my backyard, and or vice versa, or something else that they feel as if they're being treated unfairly. So I think it's communicating with those residents, which I did that day, as every single one of them came up to me in a line after I presented saying, first, I don't like it. I think this is a horrible idea. You're the worst engineer I've ever seen. And then slowly I started noticing that once I sat with each and every one of them and started explaining to them why we came to the decision we did, how we got there, I started seeing a change. And it was not something that was done overnight. It was not done just that day. It took a lot of time, many, many, many months of small meetings with the community for them to understand where we were coming from. I believe also in persuasive communication, it's important your credibility as a person. They need to be able to trust you, and you need to show that. And to be credible is something that's very important for the audience that you are presenting to. And like I said, this is not just with constituents, this is also like I have dealt with elected officials and with the community. So we were able to, probably out of the 300 angry residents, I wanna say it probably became a 60-40, which in my book was a huge success, because when there's certain things you can do that are not gonna make everybody happy. It's not gonna be something that, but as long as you stick to the facts, as long as you stick to what the reason why you're doing things, and you don't change your mind constantly, because sometimes under pressure, people tend to go one side or the other, but they know what you're doing is in the best intention of them, then that is something that I believe is how you can succeed with persuasive communication. And that project, by the way, is already, it got added to the LRTP. It was a painful process, but we got there, and of course, we're moving forward to building the bridge today.
Thank you. I think you answered the second part of this also.
What? Oh, okay.
The second, it was a follow-up question. Give an example of presentation or report you have made that was controversial, so you did already basically answer that. So with that, let's start in the second round. So at this time, Member Cueto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Fernandez, can you please describe your experience with public financing and also your knowledge of financial analysis tools?
Being a Miami-Dade County employee, I deal with public financing all the time. We use road impact fees. We use funds from tax collector, from our property taxes. We have GOB funding, PTP. I can probably sit here name many other public financing. But one thing I do know is that every single one of them has there's red tape on how you can use it. You can't use road impact if you're not increasing capacity. You can't use GOB if you're doing something else. So it's limited on what you can. We have our general funds that are used for our staff, right? And also we use our secondary gas tax is also something else we use for our operations and maintenance in Dade County. So in public financing, that's something that, being that I've been in government for a very long time, then that's, those are the different funding sources that I've used with that. As far as financial tools, I know that in the county, we use the BAT program, and they also use CBAT, which is for our capital projects. And of course, our public works system is something that we do for our work orders and our invoices.
Thank you, Ms. Fernandez. And just as a follow-up, can you give an example of when you've had to develop a budget and also when you've had to defend a budget to a public or private board or commission?
Okay, so we have a budget process annually. Every single year, we have to prepare a budget. I currently have a budget for traffic engineering and also for the Signal and Science Division. It's about $16 million per year for operation and maintenance. And then I also have a capital program, which we have to have a budget for, which is roughly, it's usually $30 million a year, but we have expanded. Now we're looking at $330 million over the next 5 years. So our process, usually our fiscal year is from October 1st to September 30th. And we have to start preparing, usually when the fiscal year starts in October, we start preparing in December. And that's when we have to input our enhancements, what are the needs of the department, and also prepare our capital budget prior to the summer, because pretty much by then the county closes books for us then to now present this to the community. So in conjunction with our budget department, typically we start setting up all our public meetings. There's public hearings, which is done in September of every year in the county. So we've had to go and explain to the community if they have any concerns, whether it be from parks to police to transportation. Those are topics that are constantly discussed and in different parts of the county because they set up multiple meetings with the public. So that's my experience that I've done with developing budgets.
Thank you, Ms. Fernandez. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Board Member Fano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Fernandez, could you please share with us why you should be the next executive director of the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority?
So I can execute. I am currently serving in a senior executive role in Dade County. Also, something very unique about me is that I was also a former board member of this agency. I understand the sensitivities. I understand the commitment and what it takes to be sitting where you guys are at today. I want to tell you probably the cornerstone of my success has been being transparent, always doing what is right, and being honest. You will always get from me what you see is what you get. You'll never have a hidden agenda. I will always do what is best for this board, and I will present to you always the facts and be very transparent because I believe that that is something important for every single one of you. I know I can lead this agency into where it needs to be, and not only just building roads, but I believe also building partnerships is essential. That is, I want to tell you probably one of the number one things that I know I will be successful is building partnerships to get this agency to be exceptional. Exceptional in every single way. Not just mediocre, not average. I want this agency to move forward to be exceptional, and I can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, Treasurer Weinberg.
Thank you. As treasurer, I would like to pose the question regarding planning for a bad upcoming budget year. We're about to review our budget come in June. Actually, Maria and her staff have pledged to have it ready by May instead, and we're looking rather strong for an incoming year. However, were it not the case, how will you prepare this agency for a bad budget year?
So I believe that we first need to look at where we are going to be financially, right? I understand where we are, and I understand we have some setbacks. But I believe with what we have in front of us, whatever that revenue may be, then we got to determine what is going to be the number one priority moving forward, because we can't overcommit to several different things at the same time because we are limited. I believe doing whatever is the vision of this agency, whatever is the visions of this board, of how you all want to proceed, whether it be in our customer relationships, whether it be in projects that we're adding, for example, like the Kendall Parkway. That's something that I understand, we only have a certain amount of funding for. We need to sit down and prioritize prior to me coming in with a recommendation on what will be the best. But again, I think we have a certain amount of money we could spend, and it's how do we prioritize what is best? And I will be committed to coming with recommendations to this board on options. We have to look at all the different options, and of course, meeting with the CFO and the financial advisors and staff on what is the best step moving forward. So that, again, it's never gonna be easy. I know that we've had years, the same thing at the county, that we do not get everything we need, but we have to learn how to adapt, how to be resilient. And again, we're gonna have a tough year too, because the increase in costs are significant, and that's a reality. So again, we have several challenges we need to bring up front and then determine what's, as a board, what is gonna be the next step of how you wanna proceed.
Thank you, Ms. Fernandez. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all for me.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. With that, Vice Chairman Monstein. I was going to do it again.
You love me too much.
I got you.
Ms. Fernandez,
Let's make sure I was awake.
I'm glad you stated earlier that you were a former member of this board, and as such, you are aware of our current legal challenges, especially in a state legislature that always want to dismantle this board, and I'm sure the chair is going to follow up on that as well. So what do you think is the appropriate path forward for this board?
So I believe in this agency. I believe in why it was created. I am a true believer that the toll revenue needs to stay in Miami-Dade County. So I am a true believer of that. But my role as an executive director really is about providing you all the facts, providing you all the legal strategies, providing you transparency for you as a board to make the right decisions. And I want you to know that I will make sure that I will leave no stone unturned, because I know there's been challenges in the past, but we need to look how we're gonna move forward. And I will make sure that I look at every single option on how we can come to a resolution. If it's not there, it's not there, but I'm going to try my very best to make sure that if there is a possibility for a resolution on this issue, that I will be at the forefront of it. I believe lawsuits are always meant to be resolved at some point. I've dealt with many lawsuits in Miami-Dade with municipal or with government lawsuits that can go on for a very long time. But one thing that I've seen that is very consistent, always consistent, is that there's always a chance to find a middle ground. Always. I am not a believer that everything is meant to be one way or the other. I do believe that we need to find a middle ground. And I cannot undo what's happened in the past. I'm coming into this with a fresh mindset. And maybe there is nothing I can do, but I will, like I said, leave no stone unturned to make sure that I provide to you all the best possible solutions, resolutions, legal strategies, because that's my role as an executive director to each and every single one of you.
Thank you, Ms. Fernandez. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member Monstein. Vice Chairman Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Fernandez, do you have any direct relationships or ties or indirect relationships? As an example, are you friends with individuals or firms that also may have relationships with any of the state officials who have been trying to dismantle MDX?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. To follow up on the same line of questioning that Member Monstein asked about the legal side of this, If faced with a situation where competing interests are pulling you in different directions, how would you handle? Be specific.
I will always do what's right and what I believe in. My integrity is everything to me, and I will not fold under absolutely no circumstances. I've been in situations that, like I said, I'm not giving a person or an entity or an agency what they want, but that's not what my role is. My role is to stay true to the facts and lead with integrity. And I will always do what's right, because if you always do what's right, you're never gonna have an issue. You're never gonna have a problem of something being perceived differently. So that leading with integrity is what I'm gonna tell you is the best path moving forward and something I truly believe in.
Okay. So with that, I think that's the same pattern to all three. And if you give, and thank you once again.
Thank you.
So why don't, at this time, if you want to step back, take a seat, we'll bring the others up.
Sure.
Okay, because
just-
I wanted to ask you, there's a discussion part. So the discussion, I'm pretty well-versed on everything I've read up to now. And I think that if you want to discuss, if we could bring the other people in too, because I want to.
Can I just say one more thing? Thank you to every single one of you for shortlisting me. No matter what happens here today, I want to tell you that this has been wonderful experience for me, and I am grateful for this opportunity, so thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It's up to us, but I think I pretty much have a lot of the information. And to discuss in front of them, I believe then they should be all three here. Not, I would just take it to a vote. And we move forward. We could just vote as soon as they come up and make sure they're in front.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to have a discussion?
I'm good.
May want to hear from the other board members.
Yeah, I know. I'm waiting for him. Kidding. I already messed up once and skipped up. Huh? Nature calls. Man, we don't even have Jeopardy music here. We got to put that on the list. At least we have that on the other side. Make that on the list there. Madam Secretary, please. And by the way, I want to thank you guys for taking away the plexiglass panel I asked, and it makes a whole lot of difference in the hearing. At least for me, it does.
Yes, for me too.
Yeah.
It's funny because we had our
No, please, let's not go there.
So,
Yeah, not go, yeah, not everybody. Many too many times, unfortunately, you know, we're gonna get this economy going strong. See, I would tell somebody to sing something, but I think the singer is also in the same place. We're waiting for you. All right. Mr. Attorney, do then roll call, and each member will state the person that, Commissioner Moss, my Chairman Moss, I apologize.
This thing is always. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just say to all three of the candidates that,
Yes, it is.
yeah, let me just say to all three of the candidates that I find all three of you extremely qualified. And, you know, we have the tough task and decision because we can only choose one. And so, you know, I wanted to just state for the record that I'm very impressed with the final three candidates that we had a chance to interview this evening for this very, very important job. So with that, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Actually, I thank you, as the dean always, you always bring that wisdom, and gentlemen, sincerity to whatever process we do, and I'm very appreciative of that at all times. I want to thank you all, the three of you, and those that also applied that did not get to this point. There was a lot of good people, and it was a hard decision, as the Vice Chairman said, and this one is not an easy decision either. But thank you, the three of you, for being here today. So with that, I need to call the vote. Huh? Just the name of the person you, I thought that's the way they do it here, am I correct?
No, a roll call.
If you're going to do a roll call, yeah.
I'm
You can do
sorry?
it that way. You can do a roll. Are you saying that you're going to do a roll call?
No, just call for the vote. The roll call, yeah.
Okay, yeah, you can do it that way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think we all want to say something before.
I'm sorry?
Oh, they want to say something before. They
Oh,
want to speak
yeah.
like.
Oh, no, I thought you guys looked at
That's
me and
what
went
I
like
thought
that, and you want to say something about the three of them? Go ahead, like the Vice Chairman and I.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was indeed a very difficult situation. Wrapping up my 9th year sitting on this dais, second to selecting our esteemed council a few years back. It's one of the most critical, the most critical staffing decision that we can make as a board. And we had 3 stellar candidates. I've served with Darlene, I've worked with Frank, and I've worked with Juan the longest and the most, watching him grow over the years. We had an incredible pool of candidates indeed. It was very good to see the level of quality and caliber that was produced, even out of state. Although we knew from go we were looking for the local component. I think in this critical junction where we find ourselves in this incredible agency that I know and love, it is critical that whoever comes up at the helm, it's intricately familiar with the layout of our local government, and of course, our books and our staff. I want to thank everyone who applied, but especially thank our shortlist. Darlene, thank you for your words at the end. That indeed is great to be part of the process. And Frank, thank you also for participating. You two worked together, so this was not awkward at all. And and Juan, thank you for your continued leadership and the show of force you demonstrated today through this interview process. Good luck to all of you. It's difficult to vote, but we do have to select only one of you. And with that, I'll let my colleagues chime in if they wish. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Member Monestein?
Well, first, I just want to apologize because I stepped away just to stretch my leg, and I
heard our
I didn't know
comments.
everybody. I didn't know everybody were waiting for me. So, yeah. So I'm really sorry about that. Well, I have a statement I often made to wannabe politicians that the moment you decide to run, you're a winner. You put yourself in an arena, and you may not be the one winning the election, but to share your ideas and your thoughts is enough, because someone somewhere will be on your side. It may not be everybody, but someone somewhere will be on your side, and I think that this is what this is about. And I admire all three of you for, putting your name on the hat here for this position. It's a very critical time for this agency that I'm privileged to serve as a board member. It's incredibly important to say the resignation of the former director took me by surprise. I didn't know he was about to leave, but I think what I in his conversation with me, what I admire is the fact that, well, he had some great successes here, and we had a long legal battle, and at the end of the day, the decision of the legislature, even the other day, to not move forward with 398 and 151, I think that was the House Bill 157, prove again that his track of success continues. So which put us in a very difficult decision here to select one of you. And honestly, all three of you are very well qualified. It's going to be a tough decision for this board.
Member Cueto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say, and of course echo the sentiments of my colleagues, the agency is extremely fortunate to have three candidates of the caliber that we have here today. As a fellow engineer, I'm very proud of what you all have done over the course of your career and what one of you will do for this agency going forward. We're going into a new phase for MDX, and MDX is at the center of the success of not only our highways, but of the community overall of our county, which I am very passionate for as I am in part a representative of this county on this board. So I just want to thank each of you for along the entirety of your careers being champions for infrastructure, being champions for connectivity, for mobility, and for transportation. And as Commissioner Montesine, Member Montesine just said, it's going to be a very difficult decision, but we thank you all very, very much for your interest, time, energy, and efforts and dedication to the work we do here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member Cueto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member Fano.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the three of you. It was very interesting, and for a person having been here so long, this is going to be one of the hardest decisions I will have ever made here at MDX. But I want to take this opportunity to thank my fellow board members, because being old doesn't make me wise. I've learned a lot from all of you, and I thank you for that. It means so much. With that, thanks everybody for being here. I look forward to working with whoever we collectively choose to be the next executive director of MDX. It is true, whoever we choose will not be able to wear the shoes that Javier still wears. They will have their own shoes to fill, and I look forward to working with that person as close as I have with Javier for the many years that I've been here. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you. And with that, Madam Secretary, I think let's call it out.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't. Honestly, I didn't hear the process that is established.
Process is,
are we going to nominate someone? Is it going to be?
We're just gonna, each person, as they call for the vote, state the name that you would like to see in the position. And that way we could get through it. And I think that'll be clean, transparent, and to the point. Everybody okay? That's basically what I asked earlier. Whatever you want to do. All right, let's do it that round. All right, let's do it.
Board Member Cueto.
My vote is for Ms. Darlene Fernandez.
Board Member Montesine.
I second Board Member Cueto and his.
Board Member Smith-Fano.
Board Member, I vote for Ms. Fernandez.
I vote for Ms. Fernandez.
Treasurer Weinberg.
I vote for Mr. Toledo.
Vice Chair Moss.
I vote for Ms. Fernandez.
Chairman Diaz.
I vote for Ms. Fernandez also. Okay, could I have another vote to vote unanimous? That's what we've done in the county. Mr. Vice Chairman Moss?
I move that we appoint Darlene Fernandez as the next executive director of the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority.
I have a motion by Vice Chairman Moss. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Cueto. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Congratulations, Ms. Fernandez.
Mr. Chairman, this
Vice-
is,
Vice Chair Moss.
thank you, and this is Women's History Month.
Here we go, making history.
Exactly.
And with the appointment of Ms. Fernandez, she would be the first, if I'm correct, woman executive director of the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority. So congratulations.
Fernandez, actually, assume a seat and say it from here.
I have to say I'm speechless. Excited that I get to sit on this dais again and be a part now of every single one of you still. Even though, I had resigned as a board member because I really, really wanted to take this opportunity. I took this very serious. And this, for me, is an opportunity that I know I can do a lot for this agency. And I'm very excited to be serving with you all and to represent what's right for this agency. And I thank you, each and every one of you. I know your decision was a difficult one. Frank, I've known since I was probably 8 years old. And Juan, of course, has been the face of this agency for a long time. And I think what we've had with Javier being in this agency and all his staff, it shows the quality of what this body does and what our leaders did for this agency. So you have my commitment to always do what's the best, and I thank you for this opportunity. Like I said, I'm probably speechless, was not expecting, this today, but I'm here for all of you, so thank you.
Member Monestein.
Madam Director, congratulations. The only thing I want to say, congratulations, is very apropos, as my dean, Commissioner Morse, said, in regards to you being nominated during Women History Month. But it's not just because of that. Frankly, my vote is because I truly want to hold you up to some of the answers you gave us during the interview. Yeah. And you gave some very bold answers to some of the questions that were asked here. I think it's an opportunity to see to see what you will do with being the out-of-the-box person that you suggest that you are, and some of the answers that you give us in terms of your style. Because I think it's bold to be sitting here to decide that you're going to resign to run for this, and also your answers kind of like suggest that you've been thinking this through a lot in terms of understanding what direction we should go. And as the chair gave me the opportunity to serve here, we'll hold you accountable to some of these answers.
Thank
you.
I think Treasurer Weimer.
So, being that I did not vote for you, did not certainly mean I felt you lacked in any of the character or the knowledge that would be required. Coming from a psychological background, my interview skills to me are very, very important. So the background and the know-how, I felt led strongly with Juan. You certainly also gave some very, very strong answers and bring a fresh perspective, as you say, a different twist to the agency that perhaps is necessary given our current climate. So not the whole women's thing, because I'm not one of those women, sorry. No, I'm not. I believe in experience and earning it, but it is very significant, and indeed it is Women's Month, of course, and that this face and this attitude and this positive challenge in the status quo. I peeked over your notes. We were taking different notes. Perhaps it's what we need to steward this ship at the moment. So welcome. You just moved one seat over, a much more responsible seat, but we'll get to continue working together. So welcome. Very, very happy for you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We're good? All right. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, once again, to the two gentlemen sitting in front of me, thank you. May the Lord continue blessing you and working alongside with both of you. It is going to continue to be a great honor. So thank you. So with that,
Picture.
motion to adjourn.
Move it.
Moved.
No, nobody can do it but this guy right here. All right, we adjourn, guys. Thank you. Picture time in the middle. Congratulations, young lady.
Women Awards, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I'm gonna get more of these pens. Is.
Oh. Okay.
For pictures.